Today on the 1012 podcast, Andy and myself are catching up on the wild and weird season that is Big 12 men's basketball, plus a weekend to remember or forget, depending upon who you're a fan of. Texas Tech controversy, Houston losing, Iowa State upset, Kansas State on a roll, and a look at the standings overall. Man, that's a weird year. We got to get to it. Coming up on the 1012 podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Welcome to the 1012, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 Conference. We are the flagship show, the 1012 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin. Thank you for joining us on this Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever you decide to hit play and turn this show on and listen to what myself and Andy Mitz had to say. Wherever you are listening, please do us a favor. Leave us 5 stars and review. It really does help the show out, especially if you're on iTunes. We're 7 ratings away from 100. We could use a few reviews. It's been a little while, so just take 2 minutes, hit that 5 stars, leave us a review. I'd be happy to read it here on the show. If you've got thoughts on the show, 1012 network or 1012podcast at gmail.com is always available to you. If you're watching or listening on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe. We would appreciate it. I hate having to say those kinds of things.
Also, we won't complain if you decide to, grab a sister or spouse or mother, one of their accounts, and do leave a review if you've already left one. We really don't mind.
If you want to just hack into some things, because apparently right now it's perfectly fine to be a unqualified, unelected individual and just walk into places and do whatever you want with individuals' data. I'm sure that's going to get us audited very soon as well. So, just do whatever you want. It's fine. This is America. So,
look, we have found that there are no consequences for anything, including basketball refs, which is a nice segue into the one topic that I feel like we actually can talk about tonight without one of us feeling out of our element.
I mean, I'm always out of my element. You're out of your element, Donnie.
That's fair.
Yeah, we'll just dive in. We're going to riff tonight. It's me and Andy. Jamie is busy because, women's basketball is going strong. We're not going to go too long tonight on account of Big 12 is finally going to drop the football schedule on Tuesday. They have announced it'll be Tuesday at 10 a.m. For those asking why it hadn't happened yet, because it was supposed to happen in the month of January. As you'll notice, it's not out and it's no longer January. Just some stuff to do with the media partners. I don't have details beyond that, but that's what I have been informed. So we do know the schedule will drop on Tuesday. So my intent is to do some sort of live show on our YouTube channel to review that when it drops. So we'll have that on Tuesday. And of course, we'll have softball on Thursday because the season gets going this week. So a lot of stuff. So I don't want to spend too much time tonight. And look,
So if you're listening to this after listening to the live show, talking about the schedules, I will just say I really wish if they were going to, release the schedules out so far outside of this time frame and talk about their media partners, that they do something unique and something interesting instead of just probably what is going to happen of we're just going to let all the schools release their schedules however they want on social
10
media.
a.m. on a Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central Time. Because they keep releasing things with Eastern Standard Time, and I
loved the idea of you have selection shows for all kinds of stuff. So you have a playoff review or reveal show. Like, let's do a Big 12 football schedule review.
Yeah,
show.
no,
like a reveal
Absolutely.
show would be fantastic.
Yeah. And like the problem with those 9 times out of 10 is it's a 30-minute show, and we wait 15 minutes for them to finally start doing it. so they can get at least 2 ad breaks in. But I mean, come on, get creative. I've got my notes app. I have my little show. I have been working on a bit of a rant in relation to where did all the creativity go in this conference that we were planned or promised a couple of years ago when you were Mark Turkover, but I'm going to save that for another day. Texas Tech gets the win in overtime at Houston despite losing J.T. Toppin and Coach McCaslin 2 ejections. Obviously, Texas Tech's athletic director released a statement afterwards. They're not happy about those decisions. Even Houston fans were complaining about the refs in this game, which mars what was an awesome basketball game between 2 really good teams this year that was completely ruined because the Big 12 refs have to, at least on average, 3 to 4 times a season, make the story about themselves. Now, look, should he have been ejected or not? It's obvious it was an accident. Was it a bit egregious in the action itself? Yes. Can I see both sides and take both sides? Sure. But when you've already ejected a coach early in the game, then I already feel like you were just itching to continue to overreact to things. And when both sides are complaining at the end of a game about the decisions that you made, that doesn't mean like, well, that means we did a good job and called a fair game. No, because a fair and well-called game in which you did your job correctly, no one's talking about the refs at all. They're talking about the performance on the court, but we can't have that conversation between Houston and Texas Tech, 2 top 25 teams, one of the best, currently the best teams in the country based off of Corvick and Ken Palm and everything else. No, we can't have that conversation. We have to talk about Big 12 refs again.
Yeah, it feels like we have this conversation every single year.
Multiple times a year. And I'm
going to be honest, though, it's no longer unique to the Big 12 or unique to college basketball. Like, this feels like I remember having to talk about this stuff during football season for multiple leagues. You know, you're hearing about it all the time in the NFL. You're hearing about it even in the NBA, like a league that had a ref scandal, right? And also has a system set up to evaluate their refs and make them accountable. You're still hearing issues in there. Like, I understand that at least a portion of this is the fact that we now have instant replay that can allow us to look at things that used to be judgment calls. But the problem that I have with this now is we take those things that should be judgment calls. And like, if that's a complaint, right? Like, it's a judgment call between a 50-50 block charge call. Yes, you can have your opinion on that. If you've got 7 or 8 of those in a game that go one way or another, and you have both teams complaining about that, that means you probably officiated the game well. But when the complaint is about a call that is factually incorrect, or a call that swings a game or has such huge impacts of ejecting someone from a game and allowing them to not compete anymore, like, when those are the things that we're complaining about, and you have people on both sides complaining about those things going against their team, like, you cannot tell me that the refs were biased towards one team or another in that game. But what you can tell me is those refs were so bad that I can point to 5 or 6 different times that a single call might have swung the momentum of the game. Just the fact that it swung back and forth so many times, like you said, does not mean that they called the game well. It means that they messed up so many times that, hey, guess what? It happened to even out overall, that they weren't the reason that a team won or lost. But they sure as hell made a whole bunch of decisions along the way that really changed the face of the game and made us talk about something else entirely other than, the hell of a matchup that we saw and the great performances. We saw it in quite a few other games, across the entire Big 12 over the last 3 or 4 weeks. It seems like every single time I turn around, and look, there's a lot of Kansas fans who complain about it, and that's who I hear the most because, I'm in the Kansas space. And I will say that there's a good portion of it that is like opposing fans talking about how Kansas gets the calls. And I can point to so many times where it's like, oh, I thought Kansas got all the calls. It's like, you know what? We're both probably right. Like, there's times where it's like Kansas used to get those calls. They don't get them anymore. There's some egregious stuff that's happening against the Jayhawks, but I have to admit easily that there are just as many calls. It's like you point to that and it's like, hey, Kansas got lucky there. Like, they benefited from that call. It happens. The problem is it's happening way too many times that you can point to it. And if I want to pick out 7 or 8 plays that I say is a pattern of, oh, they're going against Kansas, I can do that. But if in the exact same game when Kansas plays Kansas State, or, Kansas plays Houston or whoever, they also can point to 7 or 8 plays that show that, oh, maybe there was a bias of officiating to help Kansas instead of hurt them. So it's like when both teams can make a credible case that the officials are biased against their team, it doesn't necessarily mean that either of them are correct, but it does mean that your officials are a piece of crap. It's just, it's unacceptable with the state that this sport is in to be having this many officiating errors, just factual errors, not even, bad judgment calls, but factual errors that are happening game in and game out. It's not excusable.
I think at some point, blaming the individuals who are forced to deal with overly complicated rules, overly complex rule books that are always changing, always evolving, and oftentimes left up to too much interpretation is not the problem. It's addressing, it is the lazy way on everyone's part to solve a problem that needs to be dealt in a more complex manner that nobody actually wants to do. This happens a lot with everything across everywhere. This is a problem. So the best way to do it is to say, no more of that. We're going to ban this. We're going to blame this person. We're going to do this. No, we have run out too many. We have a massive Division I sport. You're only going to have so many people who are going to be high-end really good at this. It's harder and harder to do it every single year because the rules change all the time. There's too much openness in what the rules are. It's left too much to interpretation. And like, I wouldn't want to, we're sitting here griping about refs. Do you want to be a ref? In any sport? At any level? Heck no. Heck no. Heck no. I have a family. Last thing I need is for my kids to get old enough to see someone saying something awful to me because I blew a call. And look, they have every right to be griped at when they make an egregious error, okay? Because of the impact that error can have, and because it's so much easier to see when a ref makes an error than, say, a coach, and sometimes even a player. And because you have an influence on the game without actually being a part of what's happening on the field to some extent, you're going to get more blame than anybody else because that could have been this or this way if you had just done that. It's a shit job that gets harder every year, and we're just going to keep blaming the refs and driving them out. Did they make...
The one thing I will say, though... Go ahead.
It is a complex conversation and a problem we're not going to solve on the 10-12 podcast on
No, and that's
February
fair.
2nd.
I do think, though, at least a good portion of this, right, is the fact the Big 12 played up, and they brought him to Big 12 Media Days. John Higgins taking over officiating. They were talking about how they were working, that Higgins was essentially in charge of, I think, the reps for 4 or 5 different conferences, or like 3 or 4 conferences, I believe it was, that they could coordinate between all of them and all that. But I think the biggest problem was, and this was a question that was asked multiple times, right? Of, well, we're going to be paying attention to, the calls people make, and we're going to be reassigning, and we're going to step up our efforts to make sure that refs are held accountable. It's guess what? The number one question that came from the media was, are any of the fans going to ever be made aware? Is anyone in the media ever going to be made aware of what happens? Can a ref make a really bad call and then disappear for 3 days and then come back in a super huge game, and all we get to hear about is, oh, well, we fixed it, no problem. And then they make another bad call. It's much like the NBA tried to increase that visibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
The report on, hey, these are the calls that were made that were in error. The Big 12 and all basketball conferences in Division I refused to give the information to acknowledge when a call was made that was bad. Basically, we get the carte blanche of, yeah, we've evaluated everything and we feel like it's like we've taken the appropriate actions. No one knows what those actions are. Nobody knows what they've identified as were issues. There are way too many times where a call could be identified as a bad call, but no one is ever going to find out that that's what the league had told them. And so then when it gets called differently and called, quote unquote, more appropriately later in the season,
I want at the end of the year for a conference to sit here and say, this is the number. We have reviewed all the calls made in a game, and based off of either to the letter of the law, this is how many calls. This is the percentage of calls that were made correctly. This is the percentage of calls that were made incorrectly. This is the change year to year to show that we've been making improvement. And we understand that fans are going to dislike things and fans are going to have problems with things, and that's fine. But if you can at least show us some tangible data, you don't have to call out certain refs, you don't have to call out certain individuals, you don't have to call out certain teams. I just want a sheet that says, and people are going to ask for more details, and you can release that or not, but at least the idea that we can show at the end of a season, we have made changes, and here's the number, here's the improvements that we can say. To the letter of the law, by formally reviewing every call played, or every call called in a game, this is the percentage that were correct, this is the percentage that were wrong, this is over time what was done within a season. Show us some data that says the changes you're making are working, because it doesn't.
Well, we know that they actually look at all of them.
It doesn't feel
because
like it.
Every year we get a video at Media Days where they go over all of the instances of something being called incorrectly or being called inconsistently with what the new rules are going to be, and they show us multiple examples. So it's like somebody's already doing that analysis. Somebody's already looking at every single play to identify what the issues are and what kind of rule changes they want to make. Like, it should be fairly simple to even release super high level data of, hey, this is what we've identified. This is the kind of change that we've seen. These are the things that last year would have been called a block or a charge, just as an example. This year, the focus was, because this year supposedly the idea was being that everything was going to be a block except for extremely blatant charges. It's like, do you actually show that the percentage of block calls got much higher compared to charges? Like, if you can't show that data to show that the things that you are changing for supposedly the betterment of the game are actually having an impact, then we have no idea if you're actually doing what you're supposed to do. And we can't take you at your word if we don't see anything to back it up, because you don't want to share data.
Texas Tech's now number 5, according to evanmaya.com in the country. Like, overall, that's awesome. Shout out to Houston coach Kelvin Sampson, who didn't allow the questionable decisions to impact his view on how this game went. Quote, Texas Tech, came into the gym, go to the free throw line 34 times, make 12 threes, and play great. Every time they needed a big basket, they got it, and we were guarding them. I told our guys, you're going to lose games, especially when a team plays as good as that team played. That's the way to handle it. Give the team credit. Texas Tech deserves credit for having that crappy situation and coming out with a win. Don't play the that means to da-da-da-da. No, nothing in sports drives me crazier than any sort of thing saying that somebody's overrated. Like, congrats to Texas Tech going into Houston and getting a huge win. Texas Tech's been close. They were so close against Iowa State earlier in the year. Big win for Texas Tech. Guess what? Houston is still awesome. You're going to lose games. Speaking of losing games, Iowa State, I believe 29-game home win streak came to an end against Kansas State, who had lost 15 straight on the road. Absolutely insane. Jeff Borzello with the stat. Kansas State's the first sub-500 team to beat a top-5 opponent on the road by 15-plus points in AP poll history. That is insane. Here's what's really interesting, and I love all this data, and I love the stuff. Kansas State is up to number 59 nationally from number 11, or 111th, at Torvik. Over the past 6 games, Kansas State is number 8 nationally. Over the past 3 games, they're number 1. It basically, according to Bart Torvik's model, nobody's played better in the country than Kansas State since this win streak began. I don't know what Tang did. I don't know what's going on in Manhattan, but Kansas State has figured something out. And maybe it will. Maybe it will be. They'll continue to play this well. Maybe it's a blip because teams get hot. But Kansas State.
Oh wait, you didn't see my explanation for this? This is all
Scott
Drew's
for giving them pep talk.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. Yeah. He went and he beat him down and showed that Baylor was better, and then he went in and talked them up so that that way they would go and beat everyone else ahead of Baylor in the conference standings and allow Baylor to get back into contention.
Wait,
so,
look,
awfully smart of him to do it that way.
Absolutely.
But
look, you got to give Iowa State. I get it. This team has had a great start to the season, and you've got a weird bit of a slide. You drop a game to Kansas State where y'all were ready to send Tang out of town feeling sad. Lose a game in overtime at Arizona. Back-to-back losses. It stinks. It happens. You have bad games. I know of all the teams you didn't want to have a bad game against, it was Kansas State at home. Jerome Tang, they don't like him for a variety of reasons. But you've got to be impressed by what Kansas State and Jerome Tang have done during this little streak. I mean, they blew out Oklahoma State, who sucks on the road. They won comfortably against West Virginia. They've kind of figured something out in this last week and a half. We'll see if it continues. Road game in Arizona State coming up. Sunflower Showdown at home on Saturday. Home against Arizona. It's the Big 12. It never the schedule doesn't lighten up. But we'll see. Is this a 3-game blip? Is this just Kansas State's figured something out? Or I don't know. We're gonna find out real quick.
I will say that there are at least some Kansas State fans that are using this as proof that Scott Drew should be the Kansas State coach instead of Jerome Tang, refusing to give Jerome Tang the credit for this, which I'm going to be honest, my own personal feelings aside, I can understand the criticism of Jerome Tang this year. And I don't know if this 3-game, well, right. But what I'm saying is coming into this year, he had to have a significantly better year. I don't know if this 3-game blip is enough to change opinions,
but
especially if it does turn out to be a blip,
right? Himself in there.
He has locked himself into the hot seat. The question really just becomes, does it blow up on him this year, or does he do enough to keep it? And
he's built up so much goodwill after that first year, and he's amassed so much power.
Well, right, yeah, I guess
there
in
Manhattan.
He is on the hot seat with the fans.
Sure.
But the administration absolutely loves him.
He has amassed so much power and control there in Manhattan. It's going to have to get real bad.
I will be very interested to see if the fans continue to be upset with Jerome Tang.
I am.
What it's going to take for them to force the administration's hand. It's a fascinating concept to kind of think about what kind of power the fans have in a place like that. Not
a lot.
I agree with you. I don't think at this point that there's a lot that can be done about it. And it would take an epic collapse from Kansas State, I think, at this point, for people to even entertain the thought of moving on from Jerome Tang in the administration, where it actually
I don't think
matters.
Kansas State fans have a lot of sway, given how long some individuals and coaches have.
I also don't think they're nearly united enough to if the entire fan base was against it, I think maybe they could get something done, but I don't think that there's enough that are that fed up with him yet at this point.
I feel like I've made myself fairly well known. I'm not the biggest Tang guy. I didn't think the contract they gave him after year one. I don't think you should give anyone a massive contract after year one. I don't care what they've done. I don't care who's coming calling. One singular piece of data.
Short of winning a national title, you should not give a big contract extension after year one.
Sure. Yes, that's fair. That's fair. Not even reaching the title game. DCU.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Iowa State fans, it'll be okay. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. Baylor came back against Kansas. I mean, Taylor 2 halves there, Andy. That second half, woof, 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 woof.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time that I've even been willing to entertain criticism of Bill Self and his coaching style as to why, because this happened now multiple times with a team that supposedly has a lot more weapons, that he can push a lot more buttons, and I am nowhere near where you have people that are already talking about, oh, you need to get rid of Bill Self, you need to encourage him to retire, like
stop.
all this stuff. It's like, absolutely not. There is no way. Someone even made like the whole,
you know what? As an Oklahoma State fan, please fire him.
Right, exactly. It's like, if he leaves, he's not gonna like go.
I'm sorry,
retire,
Steve Lutz, but like,
right?
Bring him in.
He's gonna go work for someone.
The alma mater would hire him.
Who's gonna play?
The alma mater
Kansas.
would hire him.
Right. He's gonna go work for someone that will play Kansas, and he can show them 3 or 4 times a year. Why? Because either by playing Kansas and beating them, or playing a team in such a way to cause problems for Kansas, or stealing recruits or something, like. It's kind of asinine at this point to say that, oh, Bill Self just can't cut it in this environment, and this is something I'm going to be talking about on the Rock Chalk podcast. But unfortunately, because of the Monday night game against Iowa State, that's going to be delayed until Tuesday recording. But even then, like, this is a weird blip for the Jayhawks. I do think that there are plenty of explanations for it, including the fact that this is just a weird conference this year.
But also,
I think this is the weirdest this conference has ever been.
I don't think Kansas's roster this year is on par
it's
with
very much
what
like
you would expect from a Kansas roster. I think it's a fine. I think
Yeah.
the roster's fine. I just don't think.
Well, I mean, you also look at. I do think that there is some room for criticism of decisions about starting lineups and who's played and all of that stuff, but you can do that with pretty much anyone who's not undefeated at this point, right? Like, you can look at everything and say, hey, the coach shares at least some blame for the way that this team has performed. But I'm sorry, there is no way that you can tell me that Bill Self did anything to spur a collapse of that proportion against Baylor when you're up by basically 20 points at half and you end up losing the game by almost 10. Like, that is a huge swing that takes a lot of poor player execution. And if the players cannot get themselves together and decide to fix whatever the heck is going on with them this year, then Kansas is going to struggle the rest of the year. And, Kansas fans, though, are extremely, extremely spoiled.
What?
You think about having Bill Self, right? Like, I was at the women's game today before Kansas got demolished by Kansas State on the women's side, which was talking with some of the announcers and people that are around the program. It's like, a lot of people forget the fact that all of the best coaches at the best programs tend to have down years. Calipari having, years where Kentucky completely missed the tournament, Duke even having a year where they missed the tournament with Krzyzewski, like, Kansas has not missed a tournament in basically forever. And for them to miss the tournament, it required them to be dealing with NCAA sanctions because of something that a prior coach did. Like, that's how consistent this program has been under Bill Self. They've never gotten lower than a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Like, that is just stuff that just doesn't typically happen. And until Kansas slips from that, right? Like, someone also made the comments, like, the lowest that Kansas has ever under Bill Self, or I'm sorry, since I believe it was since Ted Owens that Kansas has not finished in the top 3 of the conference. But that was back when it was an 8-team conference. Like, you look at that now, it's a 16-team conference. Like, that's, basically they finished average like 2.5. So, like, that would be like 5th place now. Like it's ridiculous to think about.
I get it. I get it. And look, Kansas always plays better as the season progresses in conference play. We'll see what they look like through February and March. I just think it's an off year for Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look at this conference, like, it's an off year. The rosters, the roster doesn't feel like the caliber of a roster you would expect from Kansas Jayhawks. So that's a respect. That's more of a credit to what you expect from Kansas. There's an expectation there of what all they're going to have, and this year they just don't have it. And then you look at the conference standings at this point. Houston and Arizona are both tied at 9-1. Texas Tech at 8-2. Iowa State at 7-3. BYU, Baylor, Kansas 6-4 in conference play. West Virginia. Houston and Arizona sitting tied for first. Remember, like preseason, those were two of the best teams in the conference based off projections. But because they both struggled in non-conference and didn't get the wins over the other top teams that they played, everyone just kind of wrote off, especially Arizona. Like Arizona got written off after the way they started the season because they had such a difficult non-conference schedule and couldn't get over the hump in any of those games. Now they're in conference play and they're playing well. Let's be honest. Let's have this honest conversation as Big 12 fans because it is important to do. It's a little bit of a down year for the Big 12 compared to some of the other conferences. The top of the SEC is really good. I hate it. You hate it. We all hate it. I get it. The bottom of the Big 12 is in this new 16-team conference. We're used to having a bad team, maybe two. The bottom's not great. Colorado, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, Arizona State. Yes, I know Kansas State's on a 3-game win streak. They're better in the last 8 games. The bottom of the Big 12, TCU, the bottom of the Big 12 just is not very good. So the bottom is not helping the conference out. The top didn't do its job in non-conference. And the conference is okay this year. Like, it's okay. It's just, it's not playing like we've come to expect the past few years with the 10-team conference that we had, and even last year to some extent, of being the best conference in America in men's college basketball.
I mean, it's funny,
it's
right?
okay.
Because the Big 12 conference, you look at KenPom ratings, it's slightly behind the Big 10 to be in the number 3 spot, but for all intents and purposes, it's about even with the Big 10.
We're used to it being like multiple spot, a fair shot
exactly
at number
the same
1
spot
versus everybody else.
that the Big 10 and the ACC were in all the times that, the Big 12 was clearly the best team for, the best conference for a huge stretch of time. It's like, Big 12 is a respectable second or third best conference in the country. It's like, someone's got to have those spots, and it doesn't mean that they're bad leagues. It's just, this is not a normal year where top to bottom, this is a ridiculously difficult conference. And I think what it's also allowed us to do, and we're also kind of seeing this because of the unbalanced schedule that we're not used to seeing very much of. Like, it's a lot harder now with 16 teams to get schedules that are even remotely close. Like, you look at, you look at just the way that some of these teams have had to play so far. They've had some really difficult schedules for some of them. And so, I wouldn't be shocked to see significant movement just as schedules change going over the course of the rest of the season. But like you said, you look at the preseason rankings, and compare that to where we're at right now. It's like, hey, guess what? The top 6 teams, right? We're all in the top 7 of the preseason. Like, the only team that is significantly underperforming is Cincinnati at this point. Baylor obviously had some struggles, but they're sitting there in 6th place instead of 4th where they were picked. Like, Texas Tech is.
Well, you have a 3-way, like, it's 2 teams tied at 1st. Texas Tech's a game back at 3rd. Iowa State's 2 games back at 4th. And then you have a 3-way tie at 5th between BYU, Baylor, and Kansas, all 3 games back from the lead at 6 and 4.
Yeah.
And West Virginia, who's been the surprisingly good team, they have an up and down. They keep suffering from injuries. Like, it's just a weird year. Like, UCF's not, it is a weird year in this conference. It is. And it's a bit of a down year. And Utah, Arizona State, Colorado coming into the conference, not playing great. They've had their moments, but they're not playing awesome. TCU's taken a step back this year. They have been a consistently good team that was making the tournament. They've taken a step back this year. They've kind of had to do a bit of a rebuild. Oklahoma State, Steve Letts, like they're who knows if they'll be good or not. It's not good. Like, Cincinnati's been really disappointing. It's just it's okay. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, you know what the Big 12 needs at this point for this year to be a success is when you have the seasons of them being the number 1 and they kind of flame out in the tournament like last year and everyone's like, oh, see, they were overrated. This is the year where you're like, no, they're the 3rd best conference. And then you get 4 teams in the sweet, 5 teams in the Sweet 16 and 2 in the Final 4 and go,
yeah,
suck it.
exactly. You know what?
Okay?
I would be perfectly fine, swapping with, the ACC if that's what we end up getting. Right.
I'm the SEC is the best conference in America. I'm just gonna laugh when it's
when
two Big 12 teams, a Big 10 team, and
Mountain West.
I don't know, someone from
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Mountain West / Pac-12, whatever they're gonna be in the Final Four. We all go like,
Yeah.
like it's
One final
Like,
point about how weird this conference has been, right? When you have the two best teams in Houston and Arizona, who do not have a single player right now on the Big 12 All Conference team, according to Ken Palm.
But they both have they both have like top 5, 6th men in the country according to
Yeah, no, it's really weird. So I mean, one, we've seen that the the advanced stats systems are wildly different about a lot of teams in this, or about a lot of players. It's not just in the Big 12, but I think the Big 12 really kind of shows it. But I do find it very interesting just how wildly different, depending on what you focus on, which also then feeds the narrative, right? Of, oh, well, which team is actually really good? Which conference is actually really good? Like Ken Palm has been the quote unquote gold standard of advanced analytics in college basketball for so long, but there's so many other good systems out there. Evan Maya, CBB Analytics, like there's tons of other really good systems out there that allow you to get more information, which then muddy up the waters about what you actually know about the conference, because, they say that, statistics, you can make them say whatever you want them to say. You can come up with a statistic, or you can come up with an advanced stat system that pretty much, for the most part, obviously within reason, but makes the point that you want it to make. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with any of those in general, but I do think that there's way too many people that are trying to give definitive truths about the way that this conference is going and the way that this season is going, when everything is a lot more fluid than I think a lot of people want to recognize. I would not be shocked if one of these, top 5 teams in the conference standings right now is in the bottom half coming into, like the end of March, or I'm sorry, beginning of March. Like if you were to look up, right, and you were to see, like, say, a Kansas all of a sudden, loses 4 out of 5 and finds themselves, below 500 in conference. Like, I haven't looked at everyone's schedules to like say which one, but like, I don't know that I can look at any particular team and say they absolutely for sure are going to keep winning, like all but like 1 or 2 of their games.
I feel pretty confident and comfortable in the dividing line in the Big 12 right now. I feel pretty confident that you can draw a line under UCF and say everyone above this line has a shot at the tournament. Everyone below this line, good luck in Kansas City if you want to get there. I mean, and so
That's
we can
fair.
play that game based off schedules. I'm not going to play the like, look, who has here and hit. Like, I feel pretty confident that there's a pretty clear dividing line between potentially tournament bound or going to be in the tournament versus thanks for playing, enjoy some upsets, get ready for whatever other sport you guys are really good at. If you are,
I mean, the only team I think that has an opportunity potentially to jump, well, I think K-State does if they can continue somehow to keep doing what they're doing. But
they're 10-11. They're going to have to go on a hell of a win streak.
Oh no, I know, but but like what I'm saying is, like, if they finish, out of a 20-game conference schedule, if they finish, 14-6 in conference. Oh wait, no, that would mean that they have to win out. Never mind. Sorry.
Yes, okay.
Sorry. No, so like if they went like 12-8, right? So 2 more losses the rest of the way. I feel like that would probably, like, going 8-2 to finish conference season, I feel like that would probably be enough with the recent history to put them where they're solidly in the tournament. And they wouldn't, but again, it's going to require something ridiculous like that, like you're saying.
If they go 7-3 and finish above 500, we might have that conversation.
But would I count on it happening? Probably not.
No, but who the heck knows? Because this conference is
wacky.
It's weird this year. And again, folks, you should get the 16 teams in a conference. Conferences should be this size.
We are finally seeing the wackiness between good and bad teams in basketball that we usually see in football.
There's good wacky and there's bad wacky. And we've had good wacky and good fun and good weird and good exciting. Now there's 16 teams in this conference. It's going to create wackiness and weirdness across every sport when you have conferences this big.
Right.
It's
The
just
point I was making is
Yeah.
In basketball, it's usually good wacky because it's a lot of really good teams, right? That are playing each other. And so it's wacky in the sense that one really good team could get upset by another good team. On the football side, we've had some really good teams, some really bad teams, and some weirdness happening on the football side. We're now starting to see that on the basketball side because there's so many teams now that it's possible to have those really wacky disparities.
Yeah. If your team does suck and you're looking for something else, baseball starts next week. Softball starts this week. So if your team plays either the stickball sports, or maybe you're just really good at men's or women's tennis, because there's some solid tennis programs going. Arizona State, you guys, your men's basketball team is, it's fine. Your men's tennis team, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, lots of other opportunities, other teams to support if your basketball is not delivering. Oklahoma State, your men's team plays basketball. The women's team is playing really well. Support the women. There's lots of opportunities for other things to support. Obviously, softball season starts this week, so I know where our attention will be. I know that we will be covering softball every Thursday. Pull up the Mean Girls meme on Thursdays. We talk softball. So that's what we'll be doing again this week as the season kicks off. And of course, as I mentioned, Big 12 schedule drops Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. I don't understand this Eastern Standard Time graphic stuff just because like 2 Eastern Standard teams are in the Stop it. You add a bunch of Mountain Time Zone teams and you're like, all right, Eastern Standard. Forget you. God's time is Central Time.
Right. Everything conference, like important conference structure wise is in the Central Time.
Yes. So we'll be live on Tuesday on our YouTube channel. It's 1012 Podcast. Come check us out there. I do like to post some of my interviews from shows there. So we had a great interview with Utah softball head coach. Really appreciate Amy Hogue hopping on. So go check that out. Of course, if you have not listened to last week's softball episode, do so. Yeah. Oh, man, I almost forgot. Charlie Hustle. We'll just do it now because it's back, man. So excited. But we got a new promo code. Here's what you just need to know. 1012 Network. TEN12, the word network. That's what you need to know. That's how you get 15% off all non-sale items at charliehustle.com. Thrilled to be partnering up with them again for 2025. And look, they got a bunch of stuff that's coming out. They've got a bunch of great deals that are going to be dropping across the next few months that you're going to want to be aware of. So just know that, okay? Just be aware, keep an eye out, keep watching, because there's going to be some great stuff for you that's going to be coming out soon. So if there's stuff on sale you like, awesome. If there's not, use our promo code. Use the promo code. It's so good. It's 1012 Network. It's easy to remember. Look, they got President's Day weekend sale. It's going to be awesome. They got a Fleece weekend sale. They have a Texas Day with 25% off all Texas school gear. They're going to have FanFest pop-up at the Big 12 tournament. They're going to do Bracket Buster sale. We're going to have our usual bracket challenge. Partner with them to give away some Charlie Hustle stuff. So lots of great stuff from Charlie Hustle coming up over the next couple of months. So just keep an eye on all of it. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. Andy, this is a good spot to just wrap it. We're gonna shy of 45 minutes. That makes me happy.
So much for a short episode, right? Like,
it's not an hour. It's not. You and I successfully stayed under 45 minutes. I'm gonna take it. So for Andy. It's Andy Mids 12 on Instagram. Sorry, on Twitter. It's Rock Chalk Podcast. At some point, get on. I know that you have on Bluesky. You finally got the Jayhawk site.
Yes,
there.
all Jayhawks is over on Bluesky. I think I had gotten about 3/4 of the way through setting it up for Rock Chalk Podcast, and then something came up. So
I'm halfway through setting up a Big 12 feed on Bluesky because I want to make one because there's not one, and I'll get that done at some point as well. If you do join Bluesky, if you're new to it, we've got a great starter pack that's available for you for Big 12 fans. It's over there. There's a really good Iowa State collective following over there. Like there's a lot of, again, most online fan base, they all hopped on Bluesky as well. If you really want to join the Discord too, Why Not 90 Lights Discord, Why Not 90 Light, the podcast for Iowa State here in the 1012 Network. They got a great Discord. There's plenty of non-Iowa State fans in there. Our little 1012 community. We have a lot of fun. So Andy's in there. I'm in there. Lots of hosts of the podcast are there. I'm going to bounce. We'll talk to you again on Tuesday when the schedule drops, and we complain about it as well. But I'm still, in all honesty, I'm looking forward to it. And softball season's here. I am so excited. I'm going to go sign up for my 1 month of Flow softball like I always do. So, folks, we'll talk to you again on Tuesday. We'll talk to you again on Thursday. Have a good week, and let's all just be happy that January is finally over.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.